Are y'all about to start?
Yeah, we're about to start.
Checking if the mic works. Can y'all hear me? Awesome. All right, good evening, everybody. Good evening. We're going to go ahead and get started. So I know people are still going to be coming in, but we wanted to be respectful of everyone's time. So thank you so much for being here. I'm Marina Alderete, I'm your councilwoman for District 7, and I'm so excited about this evening. I think we're going to learn some important things. We really are focusing on keeping the conversation constructive and productive, so thank you for your help with that. But you know, safety and security is of utmost importance to me and my office. Sorry guys, I'm going to totally call y'all out. The team wasn't expecting me to call them out, but I wanted the District 7 team to come up here really quick. Sorry, I know. Really quick. Y'all can just come up here. They should be used to it by now. I know.
They're coming around.
But the reason I am doing this is because, you know, I've been visiting with a couple of y'all, and so many of y'all have interacted with them and have had such positive responses. And that's so important to me because my first priority when I was elected was to put together a great team. And I feel that I've done that, and so I really want to give them recognition. Really quick, can y'all say y'all's names?
Hi, I'm Isabella Chavez. I'm the Director of Marketing.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here. I'm Eric DeLude, I'm the Chief of Staff for Councilwoman Marina Garita.
Hey everyone, I'm really excited for an interesting and lively discussion. My name is Esmeralda Newman, and I'm the Director of Communications.
Good evening. My name is Frank, Deputy Speaking Staff. Good evening, everybody. I'm Frank Ramirez. I'm the Director of Zoning and Infrastructure.
Good evening, I'm Santiago Hernandez. I am on the Constituent Services team.
Hi everyone, my name is Saul Contreras. I'm also on the Constituent Services team.
Good evening, my name is Latika Sims-Howell. I'm the Director of Constituent Services and Events.
I know, I totally threw them for a loop because that was not in the script. But it's important for me, for you all to see them and know them because they're really what is making our District 7 office so responsive, and I'm so proud of the work that we're doing together. I did want to just give a brief introduction and let y'all know what we've been up to. So I'm so proud because today was our first budget process and budget vote. It was a $3.7 billion budget for fiscal year 2024 beginning October 1st. Our team worked hard. I just got off the campaign trail. I knocked on over 4,000 doors. I heard from you all that safety and security is of utmost importance. We're hiring 105 new police officers, 32 firefighters. One of the things that I promised and was really pushing hard for was for District 7 to get a low-cost and free spay and neuter clinic because dangerous dogs are also a part of why we're not feeling safe and secure in our neighborhoods. And so I collaborated with District 5 Councilwoman Terry Castillo and District 1 Councilwoman Dr. Secor to be bringing that to you all. One of the other things that we pushed for in this budget was the staffing of the SA Core team. The SA Core team is the team that responds to mental health calls, and they had a good team, but we wanted to make sure that that team was available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and able to handle peak call volume times. So I was really happy to collaborate with the rest of my council colleagues to make sure that that SA Core team is completely staffed up. Let's see. You know, I talked about the clinic, the spay and neuter clinic, and that will help us get to the root of the issue. We are set aside money for the homeless population. You know, one of the things that I've mentioned before, y'all probably heard me say it a million times, is that we want to treat our homeless with care and compassion and connect them to the help and resources that they need. We're still going to do that. We also still need to be very vigilant about cleaning up these homeless encampments that we're seeing all over our city. So the funding for that homeless bucket of funding is going to go to cleaning up the encampments, but also connecting our homeless to the help and resources that they need. I'm also really happy because my first CCR, the council consideration may have trouble a time or two with keeping up with their lawn care. They, maybe they're in the hospital for a few days, and things get overgrown, and then boom, they're hit with a code compliance citation. Instead of hitting these people with a ticket, we are setting aside funds so that we can care for them and help them with their lawn care maintenance, so they're not dealing with a ticket. It just reminds me of growing up and how we checked on our elderly neighbors, and so I'm glad that we're setting forth that policy. And then also infrastructure is a huge priority. We hear from you all about streets with no sidewalks, with broken sidewalks, no curbs and stuff, and so there is a large portion of the budget that is focused on infrastructure. But the team and I, we worked hard, and this was a really good budget for us. I kept waiting for the shoe to drop, like one of our big items taken out, but it didn't, so we were extremely happy about that. And, as always, the team and I are here with any questions, to answer any questions or concerns that you have. So tonight the flow is that we're gonna have some updates from some departments that are here with us tonight, and then we're gonna get into the discussion with Chief McManus and the District Attorney Joe Gonzalez. With that, I'm gonna.
Officer Sean.
Okay, okay, perfect. So for the first speaker, is this? Okay, perfect. We're gonna have Safe Officer Sean King, who's one of the 11 safe officers, just to let you all know about crime in District 7.
I'm gonna probably speak loud enough for everybody to hear. Can everybody hear me great? All right. My name is Sean King, and I work out of the Prue Road substations, kind of more on the northwest side. We are joined by the West Patrol safe officers, some of the sergeants here, also along with our Assistant Chief Gomez and our Captain Smith over the Prue Road substation. So a lot of things that we deal with under SAFE, we wear a lot of hats. We do everything from homeless encampment to abatements, to taking care of issues that are maybe actually in your neighborhood, neighborhood disturbances, speeding. We do a lot of things within the community. Some of the things that we see a lot, that are probably the biggest hot button topics, is homelessness. So what we see in the homeless community itself, one is actually the narcotics and the alcohol abuse that we see them trying to fund for themselves. And that's them out on the streets and the corners asking for money. I know council persons are pushing really hard for us to, if we see the persons out there panhandling, please don't give to them. There are some very great charities that are here in our community that we ask you to actually donate to them to actually help on the back end to get them services they need. We partner with DHS, which is Department of Human Services, to actually go out there and get them care. If it's mental health, if it's housing, we try to get them the most appropriate care that we can. After that, we actually abate the homeless encampment, probably within 48 to 72 hours afterwards. And then we try to also get them help afterwards on that also. Some of the big ticket items that we see is property crime. We see a lot of car break-ins. So it's really easy for us to try to combat that. One thing that we see is a lot of guns being stolen out of vehicles. Please don't leave your weapons if you have a vehicle. Please don't leave your weapon in there. Also, please lock your doors. That's probably the biggest thing that we see from the video cameras and everything that into the neighborhoods that we see with the Ring cameras or any type of surveillance within the neighborhood. Just lock your doors, because all they're doing is pulling on door handles and they're trying to get an easy way to get in your vehicle. And just remove your valuables. They're going in to look for the easiest thing possible. So your door unlocked, you leave a backpack, a laptop, something, a purse in there. I know as human beings sometimes we kind of get complacent, thinking we're going to go back out to our vehicles, get that purse, get that bag, and we forget about it and we go to bed, and then we wake up in the morning like, oh my gosh, somebody broke into my vehicle. So please try to be cognizant of that and actually lock your vehicle, take your valuables out so these people don't get into them. So that's really our biggest two hot topic items. I know we're going to be in back after we get done with everything, so if you have any questions, please come back to our back table and we'll answer questions as best as possible for y'all. Thank y'all.
Yes, thank you to Officer Sean King. I know I see him all the time at our neighborhood association meetings, and so many neighborhoods love him, and he's extremely responsive, and we were really appreciative of that. Like he mentioned, there are going to be some tables in the back that they're going to be around afterwards if you all have questions. And then back here we do have tables from the district attorney's office as well. With that, I do want to introduce our San Antonio Fire Department point of contact, Chris Montesier. Welcome, Chris.
I don't know if I need a mic. Well, I guess maybe I do. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Montestier. I'm a Deputy Fire Chief with the San Antonio Fire Department. And I'm going to use my time today to talk about fire safety, which is very important for all of us. And so we have a program. We're calling it a fire safety scan. Scan, S-C-A-N. And I'll go over each letter. So first and foremost, S. Can anybody tell me what they think the S stands for? The most common life safety feature that everyone should have in their homes right now. Smoke alarm, exactly. Smoke detector or smoke alarm. So everybody here should have smoke alarms, correct? Are they working? Have you checked? Very good, thank you. You have to check and make sure that they're working. And so if they're only battery operated, some homes only have battery operated smoke alarms, I want you to check those batteries and actually just change them out twice a year. Every time you change the clocks, just change out those batteries. If they're hardwired smoke alarms, which they're connected to your home electricity system, they'll have a battery backup. And some of you might have heard that chirp. What is that noise? Chirp. You're trying to figure out which one it is, right? And what do you do with that smoke alarm when you hear that chirp and you haven't replaced the battery, you don't have a battery? You take it down, and how many people put it back? You really have to make sure that you replace those batteries, that battery backup. You're smiling because it must have happened, right? It happens all the time. I mean, I chase them down too in my own home, but you have to replace those batteries. Make sure those smoke alarms are working, okay? Next letter in the safety scan is the C. C stands for clear path or clutter. So you have to have a clear path of escape in your house. Some of us, our garages especially, but sometimes living areas. Some of us are pack rats or we're hoarders. Have anybody seen the Hoarder show? Nightmarish, right? But you have to have a clear path of escape. Clutter. You don't want to say something cliche like clutter kills, but really, we've seen a lot of fatal fires that have to do with somebody that's been a hoarder. They have a lot of clutter, and they don't have a clear path to escape. So even if the smoke alarm goes off, they just can't make it out of the house. The A in the scan. A stands for action, an action plan. You have to know what to do. Think about those things. If there was a fire and I'm in the kitchen, how am I going to get out? If there's a fire in the bedroom, how am I going to get out? I'm on the second floor, there's a fire. How am I going to get out? Plan for those things. Those of you that have children, families that have children, make sure that you have an action plan where you have an exit drill and you practice those sort of things. Make sure you can get out safely. And once you're out of the house, you never go back in, right? You teach that to the elementary school kids. Don't go back in to get the pets. Don't go back in to save your favorite picture on the wall. Once you're out, stay out if the house is on fire. So action, an action plan. Last but not least, we're all neighbors, right? D7. The N in the safety scan stands for neighbor. How many have an elderly neighbor? How many have a neighbor that has special needs? How many have a neighbor that you don't think they have a smoke alarm? We have to be good neighbors, right? And so check up on your neighbor. So my neighbor, Miss Jackie. Miss Jackie, how you doing today? I'm doing great. She's taking out the recycles or whatever. How you doing? Hey, I was at at a town hall and they talked about smoke alarms. How's your smoke, my what? Or your smoke alarm. Make sure that you have working smoke alarms. We can help you with that. And so make sure your neighbors are taken care of too. All you have to do is ask those questions. Sometimes people just need a little bit of help, and we're all here to help. Right? So that's part of our safety scan. If you're looking for more information on that, there's a website, FireSafe SA. We have a lot of information on there. We also have a booth back in the back with our public outreach team. And they have some handouts, some of you, I see those already, some of our door hangers. But look at some of those tips, those fire safety tips. We have seasonal tips on there. We've got Halloween coming up. We have holidays. You know, people are going to have candles, you know, Christmas time. So there's a lot of safety tips in there, and we hope that you take advantage of that. So with that, if you have any questions, we'll be back here in the back, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Chris, and thank you to the San Antonio Fire Department for also being here. Next up, we have David Rowe, who is the interim homeless outreach manager. Thanks so much, and welcome, David.
Hi guys, my name is David Rowe, I'm the interim homeless outreach manager. We have, at the Department of Human Services, we basically have three facets to what we do to address homelessness. The first part that we have is our Homeless Connections Hotline, which is a hotline that folks in town can call if they need assistance with like rental assistance to prevent them from falling into homelessness, or if they need to be connected to a street outreach worker, or if they need some services. If anyone needs that number, it's 210-207-1799. If you need that, I'll be around so you can get it later. The second part of what we do is our abatement team. Now our abatement team, we receive referrals through 311 and through the council district office. So if an encampment is in that area and there's safety concerns, or there's biohazard, or if it's in a water runoff, then our folks can go out there and assess that site and then schedule it for a cleanup. So they'll go out, assess the site, and then 48 hours later they'll go and clean it up if they deem that it's something that needs to be picked up. Okay. The last part, and this is our part of the house, is our homeless outreach team. We have folks in every city council district. They're out there Monday through Friday, reaching out to folks on the streets, trying to connect with them, build relationships, and then connect them to shelter and housing. This is the work I've been doing for the last couple of years now in our community. But that's pretty much what we're out there doing.
Thank you so much, David. I mean, David and his team's work is extremely important because we do know that we are seeing an increased homeless population, and so we couldn't do this work without you. Thanks so much, David. Next up, we have Animal Care Services Director Shannon Sims. And again, Shannon and his team and I have been partnered really closely to understand what Animal Care Services needs to get these loose and dangerous dogs out of our neighborhoods. And so we're glad to partner, give them the funding that they need so that they can have the resources to do and to keep our community safe. So I'll turn it over to you, Shannon. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilwoman. So I'm going to focus on kind of the budgetary aspect of kind of what's been going on the last couple of days. This is one of the most robust packages that, at least in the 10 years that I've been here, that Animal Care Services has got in order to be able to respond more quickly to the needs of the community. Part of that is 4 additional bites officers, bites investigators, 2 additional dangerous dog investigators, 2 supervisors to help kind of increase the span of control in our field operations, and 7 new first responding officers that will be out in the field. Now there's been some, I'll call it maybe a misunderstanding of some of the headlines that have been running, that ACS decided to turn away and walk away from $2 million. We didn't want all this extra money for more officers. What I'm going to tell you is that is untrue. We've developed a strategic plan over the last 18 months. That strategic plan had a plan for implementation. What we have done is we've combined years 2 and 3, which is going to, again, 14 more first responders next year. The reason we did not implement that this year is because there are insufficient trucks available for us. We did order all 3 years worth of trucks this year, but they're not going to be here for 18 months. I don't want to put officers out in the field if they don't have a vehicle to be able to get to your call for service. That would be a misuse of our funds. But we are moving forward with a robust training program to get these officers out in the field and recruiting. Additionally, the councilwoman had spoken about the lack of spay-neuter. This has been a huge concern for me. Everybody's probably aware that we have the Brooks and the Brackenridge clinics that do free and low-cost spay-neuter surgery. The only way we grow spay-neuter capacity is by bringing in new vendors. These two new facilities on the east side and the west side that we're talking about, we're going to be contracting those out, and I'm going to be doing a nationwide search, just like we did for Brackenridge, to bring new blood into San Antonio at a low entry cost. That's the only way we grow that. Out of those two, we'll spend this first year identifying those locations, getting them contracted, getting them retrofitted and equipped, and then we'll go out and find the contracted agencies that will be running them, and we're looking at those providing about 13,000 more free and low-cost spay-neuter surgeries a year on top of the capacity we already have. So we all know that enforcement is definitely one leg of the stool to make sure that we have, keep these dangerous and aggressive animals off the streets. The second piece of that stool is making sure they're not reproducing. And the third piece of that is, what do we do with them once we have them in? If I increase 21 officers right now, that's 17,000 more animals coming into my shelter every year. We have to be sure that we have the capacity to get those animals out so the officers can impound them. So we're going with a very balanced approach, and what I can tell you is we're very excited about the support that we've received from council, and starting tomorrow, the hard work begins, which is getting all these facilities together, getting these officers trained, and getting them out there serving your community.
Yeah, sometimes animal care services does get a bad rap, but they do great work. Our team and I actually went and toured the animal care services facility, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago. Yeah, and it was, it's good, the entire team there, they care so much about animals, but they know the problem that we're seeing firsthand of these loose and dangerous dogs in our neighborhoods, and they're trying their best to pick them up, but they did need funding and resources, and so I was happy to help push to get that to them. Last up, we have our Development Services Department Manager, Michael Uresti, to talk about code compliance.
All right, good evening, everybody. How y'all doing tonight? All right, my name is Michael Uresti. I'm the Development Services Manager for Code Enforcement. I oversee Council Districts 4 through 10. And if you need anything for 1, 2, and 3, you can call me also. Code Enforcement, everybody knows how to call in code violation. Raise your hand if you don't know how. All right, okay, that's good. So if you have a code violation and you report it, it goes to 311. 311's going to get it. They're going to send it over to our officers. It's going to be going automatically to our officers. If you have an issue with an officer, maybe they're out, you're having trouble responding, you can always call me. I think I have a constituent here that I work closely with, Bianca. She knows she can call me, email me, and I'll jump right on it. Give me a list. My name is Michael Uresti. I have cards back in the back. If you need to, we'll hook you up with one of our officers back here, Mr. Aaron Cadena. He'll assist you also. Fernando Munoz is the supervisor for Council District 7. Again, if you have any issues, you can email me or call me. You can email or call the officers, or you can definitely call your supervisor. This year, for Council District 7, we resolved 7,695 issues. If you're wondering what the most of these issues were, most of them were overgrown yards. So please remind everybody to cut their grass. I know we haven't got rain, so we're not getting any grass growing, but when we do get a little bit of rain, remind them to cut their grass. We try to work with citizens as best as possible. We want everybody to maintain their yards, because if you do maintain your yards, it helps with everything. I know we're talking about SAPD, fire, and even ACS, right? You get high grass, what happens? Dogs can hide in the grass. You can have vagrants hide in the grass, right? It gets dry, you can have a fire. So we all work together in harmony to help, make San Antonio a beautiful place to live. And we want to make sure that everybody maintains their property. We're not out here to get anybody. We're just here, like I said, to make San Antonio safer. All of us, in order to just take care. So if you got any questions, we'll be in the back. Just let me know if you need anything. Thank you very much.
of the Public Safety Town Hall. Before we get started, sorry, I am going to go over a couple of ground rules for this portion of the discussion, and that is that we're all here to learn and ask questions and to be respectful. We'll try to give as many people as possible the opportunity to ask questions in the brief amount of time we have today, and questions will be limited to 30 seconds. You do have a comment card where you can fill out questions, or you can raise your hand and we'll walk around with the mic going on today. Give me 1 quick second. Okay, yeah, sorry, the chief is arriving any minute. Yeah, and so does everybody have the comment card? Okay, we'll pass out those comment cards. And again, Eric is here with the microphone as well. Our district attorney, I guess we can start with questions for him. Cool. Oh, yes, absolutely, yeah, thank you. There's going to be a 5-minute opening, so we'll let you go ahead and start first. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much for inviting us to be here. Before I start, I would just like to point out that we have several members of our attorney's office that are sitting in that back table, as well as every one of our chiefs. We have 13 different divisions. Everyone, I think, of our chiefs are here tonight. But the reason that I asked our Victim Services Coordinator, Cindy Yon. Cindy, would you raise your hand, please? And several victims advocates from our office is a lot of what was going on this last town hall on Monday was about people asking about their cases. Folks, I want to make sure that anyone that's a victim of a crime, anyone that's connected to any kind of a case in our office is informed of what's happening. So that's why we asked them to be here. If you can tell that they're sitting with their laptops. So anytime that you would like to get up and visit with them, or maybe at the end to talk about your case, if you've got some kind of identifier, we certainly would be very, very happy to do that. I wanted to take a couple minutes to talk generally about what we were doing here in the district attorney's office. You know, the criminal justice system is very complex and has a lot of moving parts. And part of what we do in the DA's office is the prosecution side. As I mentioned, we have 13 different divisions, and I've heard it said that you're only as good as the people that help lead with you. And I'm very proud to have a group of dedicated chiefs. But as I mentioned, the criminal justice system, folks, is very complex. We handle 50,000 cases a year, and we need to make sure that we have as many people running that office and that it operates efficiently. We have 500 employees, half of whom are prosecutors, and of course the support staff that comprises paralegals, victims advocates, and investigators. Having said that, I'll tell you that you know, the first part has to do with law enforcement, just like these men and women that you see here. They're dedicated individuals, and they certainly have a very difficult job. But they're the beginning of the criminal justice system. Their job is to respond to calls, to investigate whether or not a crime occurred, to formulate suspects, and to make decisions about arrest if they can. For example, if they respond to a scene and the perpetrator is still there, they certainly can make an arrest. If the perpetrator has disappeared, then they may have to file the case later in what's called an at-large filing. Then the case, the individual is arrested and brought to the magistrate's office. And we'll talk about that a little later. I think there's going to be some specific questions about bonds. But the officers job doesn't end there. The detective's job doesn't end with just bringing that individual to the magistrate's office. They are responsible for completing the investigation, which a lot of times means getting the statements from the victim, getting statements from witnesses, getting whatever forensic evidence, for example, DNA, getting an autopsy report if there is one, contacting the ME's office. And so there's a lot to do to complete an investigation. We typically require what's called a prosecution guide. If an individual is arrested, we have 90 days to complete the investigation and present that case in front of a grand jury. If we don't have everything that we need to present a case to the grand jury, we may be required to dismiss the case for further investigation, because otherwise that prisoner has a right to a PR bond. And if it's a serious offense, we certainly don't want that. We don't want that person that has committed a serious offense to be released out into the community. So we've got timelines that we have to deal with, but part of our responsibility is, as I say, to make sure that we have everything that we need so that we can do our job. But you know, when we have what we need, we do an excellent job. We do a very good job of prosecuting these cases. So far this year, we have the highest murder conviction rate that we've seen in 12 years. That's a 78% conviction rate. And those are not our numbers. Those are numbers that are reported to the Office of Court Administration. So those are numbers that are having to be filed by the courts to a state agency. We've done very well with felony DWIs. We have 90% conviction rate. So far this year, we have gone to trial 115 different times on a felony jury trial and obtained convictions of over 67%. And lastly, we have, since the beginning of the year, prosecuted 1,762 violent offenders. So clearly, we're doing what we need to be doing in our office. Clearly, these men and women in the DA's office are committed to making sure that we do everything to ensure the safety of the community. We're here to continue to work for you. We are certainly accountable to you, which is why we're here. I asked our chiefs, to come down here to answer any questions that you all may have about specific divisions. So with that, I think I want to pass the microphone back to you, Council.
For making the time, and for all of you all making the time to be here tonight. Now we're going to welcome up our San Antonio Police Chief McManus.
Yes, this one's mine. Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for being here. I want to start off talking a little bit about the budget. I don't know if y'all followed it today, but when the budget was voted on, I felt like a kid who just left the candy store walking in with a $10 bill. This was the best budget that I've ever had in my long career in 4 cities. Let me go over some of the things that we got in this budget. We got 117 new police officers. We did a staffing study. We started it back in October. It was intended to give us a number, a scientific number of how many police officers we need, because every meeting we go to, we hear, we don't see the police, we want to see more cops, we want them to work with us more in the neighborhood. And with the numbers we have right now, we can't do that, because the officers spend 60% of their time going from call to call, and 40% of that time they're off call. That doesn't give them enough time to work with community groups or HOAs or NAs. Doesn't give them time to problem solve quality of life issues in neighborhoods. So the number that we got from the staffing study was 360 patrol officers, to flip the ratio from 60-40 to 40-60. 60% off-call, 40% on-call. And then it gives them time to work on issues in communities, whether it's speeding, whether it's gangs, whether it's a vacant house that's being used for prostitution or drugs, whatever it may be. So we can't tell the officers to go faster to these calls because it's not giving the complainants the time that they need to talk to the officer. Now, the staffing study, we were looking at both the patrol side of the house and the investigative side of the house. Unfortunately, the staffing study was supposed to be done in sometime in March. Unfortunately, for the individual who was doing the study and for us, he died in the middle of it. Yeah, he got a terminal illness and he was gone before the end of the year. The second half of the study will be done by the end of September, and that's on the investigative side of the house. So we'll know the number from a scientific study on how many more investigators we need, and I'm feeling that number is probably going to be pretty large as well. So that's one thing. We got 117 new officers. 100 of those will go to patrol, and they'll go to patrol to make that ratio flip, and they'll go to patrol to reduce our response times. And then 5 of those officers are going to be going to the academy because of the increased number of cadets that we'll have going through the academy. And then the remainder of those 117 are going to go to our SA core units to handle nothing but mental health calls. So we really made out well from the staffing perspective. One of the things that I didn't think I'd ever see happen is, we've got a number of officers who were seriously injured over the years, getting shot through the windshield of their vehicles. We have money now to start putting ballistic glass on the windshield, the side windows, and the doors, so that an officer can't be injured by someone shooting at their car. A few years ago, we had an officer by the name of Bobby Decker who was pursuing a serial robber on, I want to say it was 35 or 90, one of those highways. And from 100 yards back, the guy was, from 100 yards ahead of him, the guy was shooting at Bobby Decker. And Bobby Decker got hit right in the head from 100 yards back, and it killed him on the spot. One of our officers recently lost an eye getting shot through the windshield. Lost an eye, had to do facial reconstruction. Another officer was hit by shrapnel in the arm. So anyway, that's fantastic, the ballistic glass that we'll be having for the vehicles. And then in order to accommodate for the additional people going through the academy, we are going to expand our training facility, both classroom and scenario type training. So that's really good news. So again, today was a great day for the police department, and today was a great day for the police department, and I, best council meeting I've ever been at. And just generally speaking, we have a reduction in violent crime, about 14% up through July. Part of that reduction, I believe, is due to the partnership that we've created with UTSA. UTSA criminologist, Dr. Mike Smith, who has a team of about 5 or 6 people that work with him. They worked with the Dallas police chief when he was in California. The Dallas police chief I think he was in San Jose. He came up with a violent crime plan for Eddie Garcia is his name, Chief Eddie Garcia. I read about that back in, I think, February of this year, about the violent crime plan that they instituted in Dallas. I think Eddie Garcia got there like in February, and by May they were bragging about crime reduction. It was a 26-page plan, crime plan. I read it, and I'll be very, very candid with you. I had my doubts that it was working. It just didn't seem right to me. So, you know, new chief comes in February, crime plan instituted a month later, and then 2 months later, they're spiking the ball. So I met with Dr. Smith, who was from UTSA, the head guy in this violent crime prevention plan, and I had a little debate with him about this plan, and he shut me down real quick. All of his material in that crime reduction plan was all evidence-based. It was evidence-based for positive results, and I couldn't argue with him. So we decided to try it here. We did. We began it back in January, and we're looking at double-digit violent crime reduction across the city. We just got a 6-month report. I haven't had a chance to read it yet because of the budget, but I'll be doing that starting tomorrow, and I think we'll see even further reduction from that. So I'll stop there. I feel like I'm getting stared down over here from the podium. But so I'll stop here, and we can go from here. Thank you.
I'm changing it. No, this is your turn. I'm changing out the mic, so I'll hold the pink mic. You know, you don't have to hold the pink. So I'm just gonna have one question for each of you all, and then we're definitely gonna open it up to the community so that everybody's questions can hopefully get answered. I'll start with you, Joe Gonzalez. So can you tell us how the bond system works, and who is there and who influences their decisions over the bond?
You know, that's a topic of a lot of misconception and misunderstanding. But the way bonds typically work is, as I mentioned before, if law enforcement makes an arrest, that individual who is then arrested is brought before the magistrate's office. And the magistrate has to do 3 things. The magistrate judge has to determine if there's probable cause to hold that individual. He has to inform that prisoner of his constitutional rights, you know, the right to remain silent, the right to an attorney, all those rights that we've always heard and seen on TV. And then the last thing is that he or she, the judge, has to set a bond. Now, if it's done at the Giant facility over by the jail, we have bond hearings. We have our prosecutors present, and the magistrate judge can hold bond hearings with both sides present, prosecutors on one side and public defenders on the other. We can make recommendations. The judge doesn't have to ask for a recommendation. We always want to make a recommendation. Sometimes they don't ask us. But we will review the offense report, the criminal history of an individual, and set a bond, or rather recommend a bond where we think it's appropriate. But again, it's ultimately up to the judge. Now, in Texas, we have what's called a cash bail system. And so someone, for example, that's charged with murder, where the bond is set at $100,000, if he's got the ability to post that bond, in other words, if he's got $10,000 in his bank, or he can hire a bondsman, that's the going rate for a bondsman to release someone from jail, 10%. So 10% of 100,000 is 10,000. We know there's some bond companies that will do it as low as 3%. So that individual then can be released out into the community. So if somebody, for example, is charged with a smaller, non-violent, low-level offense, but he can't afford a $500 bond, he might sit in jail until his court date. That's exactly what happened at the beginning of my administration, where not 1 but 2 people died because they were members of the homeless community. They were charged with a non-violent offense, like criminal trespass, but they couldn't bond out. Whereas someone who might commit a violent offense, but if he has the ability to pay the bond, can be released. All right, so that person then, depending on whether or not the judge orders any conditions, may or may not be supervised. If that person is released by a bondsman, it's up to the bondsman to keep track of them. There are times when bondsmen don't do a good job at supervising people in a bond situation. So the point is, bonds are set by master judges. We make the recommendations. And a lot of people believe that when someone is arrested and that person walks out the front door, sometimes before the officers get back on patrol, it's because the DA released them, or because the prosecutors that were working over at the magistrate's office did. The reality is, again, we don't control where a bond is set. We don't control the conditions under which somebody is released. So that's something that I think it bears repeating and repeating until, I'm tired of saying it, but it's important that the public understand how bonds work.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. And a question for you, Chief McManus. Another large part of today's budget that was adopted was the expansion of the San Antonio Police Department's Mental Health Response Unit, SA Core. Can you discuss their mission for the public, please?
Sure. I got it. So before I answer the question, see all these uniforms standing in the back there? They are our West Patrol safe officers. Except for the two on the far right, that's Deputy Chief Johnny Gomez. He's over West Patrol and a couple of other substations, and then next to him is Deputy Chief Jesse Salome, who is my Chief of Staff. And then moving to my left, got Captain Randy Smith back there, who's over West Patrol. And then, where's Joe Frank at? Back here in the coat and tie is Joe Frank Picasso, who is my right and left-hand person. So SA Core, what is SA Core? Anybody hear about SA Core? Everybody know what SA Core is? So the way we handle mental health calls, we have a mental health unit back in, give you some perspective. Back in 2008, we started a mental health unit with 2 people and a supervisor. The department was a volunteer effort, was asked to take a 40-hour crisis intervention training course. And at the end of that 40 hours, they would be permitted to be issued a taser. But they couldn't get the taser until they completed that 40-hour crisis intervention training. Through the years, we are now up to 20-ish officers assigned to the mental health unit, plus the supervisor. And they work from 7 in the morning till 3 in the morning, the next morning. And then from 4 till 7, there's an on-call team. SA Core works from 7 till 11. The good news is that we have gotten enough officers to add to that SA Core team, and we will have enough SA Core team. SA Core teams consist of paramedic from fire, a police officer, mental health unit police officer, and a clinician, psychologist, clinician. We will hire enough teams, enough individuals to have enough teams to cover 24/7 throughout the year. So once we get in the mid-year budget, we hired enough for 2 additional teams, I believe it was. Now we have, I don't remember the exact number, but we have enough to cover 24/7. And they respond to mental health calls as opposed to a single police officer responding. I think that pretty much covers it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and you know, it was important to my council colleagues and I that the SA Core team be staffed up for 24/7 coverage and also to handle peak call volume. So we're really looking forward to that. Now we're going to open it up to questions from you all. Eric, if you don't mind raising your hand.
Hi everyone.
Eric DeLuna, the District 7 Chief of Staff, so I'm so excited. Y'all have comment cards that you want to raise or questions, just wave them down and we'll go from there.
So I'm going to pass around the mic. I want to make sure that everyone has enough time to get their questions answered. And so I'm going to limit it to 30 seconds. I have a timer, but keep your hand up if you want a comment card. Tika's going to collect them. But does anyone want to ask a question? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm going to try to make this really quick. I really appreciate y'all's time here. You need to give a little bit of background to my question in a sense. Unfortunately, my son and his friends were victims of a very violent, aggravated assault in January by a man they had never met before and had no dealings with. They were able to figure out his social media profile, but it didn't have his real name. And because we have only hundreds of detectives to track down thousands of violent had to do the investigation ourselves to find his name and his date of birth. And once we did, we found out that he was given probation in 2019 for robbery. He immediately violated probation and has been on the run for 4 years for murder, aggravated assault, our situation. Thankfully, he was caught. He was caught, and right now, I don't tell you, we're on pins and needles, hoping that he's finally gonna get some time. I respect the police and the DA. I know how hard the job is. So the question is, for citizens, like in my situation, it was terrifying to track down someone who's a murderer, alleged murderer, and who almost killed my child. And it was very terrifying to know that he's out there, and it's terrifying to think he might get probation or time again. So what can we do as citizens to get you the support you need, to get the detectives we need? Because that detective, he wanted to find that guy. But think about it. Well, technically, not a mass shooting, but a mass shootings took lower priority because there's so many murders he's got to find. So they want to help us. The DA, they've been wonderful. The charging attorney, the prosecuting attorney, the victim advocate, they have been so wonderful to us. What more can we do as a public to get these very, very violent criminals off the street and to get you the support so that we're not having to hunt them down ourselves? Thank you very much.
Ma'am, first of all, I'm sorry that ever happened to your son. Question though, was he captured in San Antonio?
In Converse, yes.
In Converse,
By
okay.
a traffic stop, by luck of the draw, he was caught in a traffic stop.
Okay.
And really our only thing going for us is he's a terrible shot. So, because he wanted to murder everybody on the court that night. He did not want to scare them or to shoot. The guy was shot in the arm. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to kill everybody out there after meeting them minutes prior and having no relation to them or nothing. They were innocent citizens trying to have that cut apart.
You know, I think for our detectives, the biggest help that our detectives get when they're investigating a crime is information from the public. And when we don't get it, it makes it that much more difficult, just as you talked about, it makes it that much more difficult for us to get the information we need to present a case. So the simple answer to your question is, the more information we get from the public to help detectives with their investigation, the better off we are. Thank you.
I also would like to join in the chief's sentiment about apologizing that you and your son have gone through this. I can't even imagine what it would be like for my own childhood to have gone through that. So I'm sorry that happened to you and your son. But would you please do me a favor? Before you leave tonight, would you please visit with some of the people in our office? We have the chief of our criminal trial division who supervises those that prosecute murder and serious offenses. Juanita, would you raise your hand? There you go. So if you would please talk to her before you leave. We also have victims advocates over here. If you would visit with them and give them some identifiers, give them some information so that we can keep you apprised of the status of, and progress of your case. And that's really the question is, what can you do out in the community? That's exactly what you can do, is stay engaged with the criminal justice system. Give information to law enforcement when they investigate. Don't be afraid to step up and provide statements. You know, they'll say, you see something, say something. And then when they do their job and they bring the case to us, that you continue to stay engaged, because folks, we can't punish people like that. We can't send them to prison. We can't even get to the point of probation if we can't prove the case, because the law requires that we be able to prove these cases beyond a reasonable doubt. And a lot of times that means bringing witnesses in, bringing the victim in to testify, that man shot me, that man assaulted me, whatever happened, right? So we need to have people come into court. We need to have them stay engaged. You know, one of the biggest challenges during COVID, when we were shut down for almost 2 years, is we lost touch with victims. We lost touch with witnesses because they're like, you know, I'm not interested anymore. I've moved on, and I don't have time to go to court. We ended up having to do what we didn't want to do. We had to get what we could out of those cases. Sometimes we had to dismiss them because when the judge called finished the trial and said, okay, the jury's coming up the hall, what are you gonna do? We have to make that tough call. So that's one of the things that you all can do as a community, is encourage your neighbors, your friends, your family, show up and help the DA do their job, because it helps all of us stay safe.
I'm gonna go on this side of the room, and ma'am, I know that you wanted to speak on your question, so I'll get someone, but while they get your card, we'll come back to you. Is there someone that wanted to ask a question on this side of the room? I wanted to, over here? Do you want to say something? Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna keep it to 30 seconds. Yes.
Thank you. And I'm so happy to see everybody here. And like I said, prayers and support for our police, our district attorney also. We all need the help. But my question is, where do they get this training for mental health? Where is the training provided?
The training is provided by SAPD TCOL certified trainers. And also, the department, back in March, we started an advanced CIT training, CIT 202. And it'll take us 3 years to get through the entire department to get everyone trained in that. But we have started an advanced training course in addition to what we already have.
CIP is crisis intervention.
Yes, it's actually the Memphis model. It's styled after the Memphis model.
Ma'am, as far as the district attorney's office is concerned, we train our prosecutors to identify and recognize mental health. A lot of, you can't just graduate from college and decide, hey, I want to be a prosecutor. You have to go to law school. You have to take the bar. You have to pass the bar, and then you have to spend time with us until you get to the point where we feel that you're competent enough to handle those kinds of serious cases. But we all have to recognize that mental health is a reality in our community. And I've been doing this for 35 years, as you can tell by my gray hair. But when I first started as a young prosecutor, I thought my job was to send everybody to prison, to send everybody to jail. But I soon learned that sometimes mental health is a component that we all should recognize. And so that's what our prosecutors do in our office, is they identify that if there is a real mental health issue, that maybe the best place for that person is with treatment, as opposed to just throwing them in jail and locking them up and throwing away the key. So that's something that we continue to get legal education about annually. We require our prosecutors to go to classes to learn about mental health issues and how it's important in the criminal justice system.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that information. We do have a question from the community on the comment cards. Chief McManus, in April, you and the city manager committed to including funding for the handgun safe purchase and distribution. How much was included in the recently passed budget for purchase and distribution of the handgun safes?
I don't have that information, but if whoever asked that question can get with Joe Frank back there, if you put your hand up, we can get you that information.
Thank you. Eric, we'll go to you.
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to go to you, ma'am. Go right here.
My name is Rosa Maria Perez, and I live in Culebra Park. My husband, my elderly mom, we are not in a gated community. So my question to the District Attorney Gonzalez is, are criminals released on bond if they're felony cases?
Believe it or not, ma'am, as I mentioned before, under the Texas Constitution, everyone is entitled to a bond, even people that are accused of murder. The only time that we can ask a judge, and I know you're shaking your head, that shouldn't be, but the reality is that's the law. And until and unless the law is changed, we have to work within the system. We cannot advocate to violate the law. And so while we recognize that people that commit violent crimes can be released, that's why it's important that judges follow our recommendations, because we are concerned that they're going to go back out into the community and commit those future crimes. We can do things like request the conditions of bond, that they be placed on. Everybody's heard of the leg monitor. We have what's called a GPS system, a tracking system, where the judges and the courts can keep an eye on those individuals. We can ask that, for example, that they be confined to home arrest. So there are several things we can do, but again, it's up to the judges, because they're the ones that make the final decision. It's important that we do everything we can, because I know the community of Culebra Park. I lived there when I went to school at St. Mary's for several years, and I'm very friendly with the neighborhood. So we will continue to do everything we can to make sure that when we're dealing with a violent offender, when we're dealing with a repeat offender, that we recommend that the bonds that are appropriate.
And I saw you had your hand up. I'm coming over to you.
First and foremost, thank you so much for putting your lives on the line for us. We appreciate it very much. And my question is, the calls to 911, when you are dealing with a mental health issue, they go directly to the San Antonio Police Department. They don't go to the mental health unit or to the SA court. I'd like to know why. That's number one question. And also...
Can I answer that, because I may forget your second
of
one?
course. My memory.
So any call will go to either the non-emergency number, which is 207 SAPD, or the emergency number, and that call taker will direct a call to the actual dispatcher, and the dispatcher will decide whether or not to send mental health or SA Core, depending upon who might be working.
Okay. Maybe the dispatcher needs to have more training, because personally, one time my son was not violent or anything, he would just get after business. He was a little delusional. So I wanted help so they could get him to the hospital, that's all. So then just the regular police officers came instead, and so when a person sees a police officer with a uniform, they get panicky. I get panicky, you know, when somebody finds next to me and stuff like that. And so it's just a natural reaction. And so maybe the dispatchers need to have more training so that they can, when you call 911, you explain to the dispatcher what your problem is. You know, that's number one. And then also the training for the police officers. Also, I have a lot of respect for every police officers, of course, but especially the mental health unit. They are wonderful, wonderful officers, compassionate, empathetic. My son has had the blessing, our family, to deal with the unit. As a matter of fact, they are his friends. My son is in an apartment, NAMI apartments, the 21 apartments by NAMI. Are you familiar with NAMI?
Oh, yeah.
National
Matter of fact, I received a national award from NAMI for the work that we were doing here a couple of years ago.
Wonderful, thank you so much.
Had to get that in.
For the public, NAMI is National Alliance for People with Mental Illness. We just had our conference, our annual conference. 1,500 people attended, and that is for resources. This was NAMI's an association, is not only local, state, and national alliance association. It's a wonderful thing. I've been a member for 20 years now. I have a young son, 12 years old, with a mental illness. And so NAMI has been wonderful to us, just people that need help in the community. Having said that, my son is in a community of my NAMI, 21 apartments, and all the people have mental illness, and so it's a wonderful place. Never violent, everybody takes care of each other, it's just wonderful. And so the mental health unit officers go and visit, and everybody's friends, and they respect them. And as a matter of fact, one of the officers gave my son a cat. So now for 2 years, he raised a cat like a baby, and they're just wonderful people, you know, just compassionate. However, unfortunately, in March, my son was by himself in my house visiting, and officers knocked at the door. My son thought they were his friends, and so he opens the door, and there were police officers. They barged inside the house without a warrant or anything, and they put him to the floor. They dragged him, they hit him in the head. They carried him, they carried him all the way to the outside. And so the neighbor called me. When I got there, there were 7 police cars, 12 police officers. Why? I mean, that should not happen. I think, again, we need more training, more compassion. Even if the people have a lot of training, if there's no compassion, even if they go to training every day, it doesn't matter. But again, 99.999% of the officers are wonderful people. And like all the professions, we have, you know, two couple that are not. And so teachers in every profession. So it's not only police officers. I want to say thank you. You're wonderful.
I take everything you say to heart, and I appreciate that feedback. And if you would like, that initial call that you were telling me about, where officers showed up and not mental health, if you want to talk to Joe Frank, we'll research what happened there, why we didn't get a mental health officer to respond, and he'll get back to you tomorrow or Monday if he doesn't have the answer back.
And also
He's behind you.
Yeah. Also too, I do want to emphasize this is exactly why budgeting and increasing the budget for the SA-14 was extremely important to us, to the council. I do want to give a gentle reminder to everyone tonight. We need to limit our questions to 30 seconds. There's a lot of people with a lot of great questions, and so we want to get to as many as possible. Eric, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Go ahead.
Thank you, Eric. This one is for Joe Gonzalez. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Chief. Circling back to the bond issue, I understand that process totally well, the magistrates, the setting of bonds, but how can you be empowered? How do we keep the repeat offenders, the guys that are out on bond, that were responsible for what happened to our officers? How can you keep them remanded behind bars where they do not get bond when they're so egregious in their behavior? There's got to be a way that they do not get bond after they're been to the well so many times. What can you do? What can we do as citizens? Is it at the voting box, or is it complaining to our state legislators? Is it just throwing tomatoes at you? What can we do?
Well, let's hope it's not the throwing tomatoes at you. I got a little bit of that Monday night. I will tell you that there's certainly the best approach is to change the law. The best approach is to change it from a cash bail system to a risk bail system. Because I think that magistrate judges, once they are equipped with a criminal history of an individual and the severity of the crime with which they're charged, the magistrate judges ought to be empowered to make the decision, you know what, I can't let you out, I'm not gonna let you out because there's too much of a risk that you're gonna go out and commit the same kind of crime, especially when it comes to domestic violence. Because a lot of the victims of domestic violence are in a cycle of violence, and we need to protect them. And so that's one way that we can change that, but that's got to happen in the legislature. So one of the things I would encourage you all to do as citizens is contact your state representative, contact your state senator, and contact the governor and say, you know what, you've called special sessions about for other reasons. How about calling a special session to change the bond system so that we can keep this from happening? Now, there are things that we can do, and there are things that we have done whenever we are made aware of somebody who's not on bond, picks up a new offense. We can go to court and file motions to increase the bond. We can file motions to revoke the bond. Again, it's up to the judge, but we can certainly have a hearing. We've done that before. Probably every prosecutor sitting here has, at one time or another in their career, asked for a bond revocation or a bond increase. But again, the accused has a right to have his lawyer there, so we fight it out. Just like you see on on TV, just like you see on Law and Order, but we can do that. So there are certain things that we can do. But again, we've got to work within the system. We have to understand that we cannot violate the Constitution. And the way it stands now, that people are going to be entitled to a bond. And what we can do is make sure that we do what we have to do. Let me just say this because it bears repeating. What the magistrate judges do is a tough job. I know because I did it for 7 years. I like to say that's part of the reason I have gray hair today. Because for 7 years, I was awake in the middle of the night on weekends where everybody else was asleep and the officers were bringing cases to me. But magistrate judges, just like our prosecutors, ma'am, do not have a crystal ball. And if there's nothing in the criminal history that red flags us or indicates to us that they have a propensity to shoot an officer 6 months or a year down the line, how are we going to know that that's going to happen? You know, we have to set bonds that are reasonable because here's what the law says. Bonds are created to ensure a prisoner's or defendant's presence in court. They cannot be so oppressive that they keep that person in jail. That's what the law says. So again, we have to make decisions to recommend bonds that are not so outrageous. And I tell this story. I have a good friend who years ago was a magistrate judge, and he used to set bonds at $1 million just as a regular practice. He got in trouble for that, and people started ignoring the $100 million bonds. And the minute that the case wasn't filed in a district court, the district judge would reduce the bond. So we have to be reasonable, but we have to be aware, and we have to do the best we can to predict that what happened with these shootings. And I've said it in the past, I'll say it again. Again, this is very dangerous what these men and women in our community do. I know because I have a member in my family who's a member of law enforcement. He's retired SAPD. He now works for the sheriff's office, and I've heard all those stories about how he didn't know whether or not he was going to come home the next day. So yes, we all have to come together, and that's why it's important the chief and I work together, because we're all about the same thing, public safety.
And actually, that's a good segue to the question from a resident in the back there from the comment card. Have you guys come to an agreement on where the holes are in the processes in your own agencies? And second part is, and what is being done to plug in those holes?
So there is, I've made my concerns very well known, as you all may know. The next step in this process is for the mayor and the county judge to bring us all together to talk about the gaps, to talk about how we might address them. So that's kind of where we are on that. So.
Well, the chief is right, but the quick answer is it's a work in progress. We're not going to solve this overnight, but I do think the first step is communication. That's why it was important for us to come together and to find common ground. And he's right. There's no one person, there's no one agency that's at fault when something goes wrong. And so that's why we need to have everyone come to the table. I've had a conversation with the mayor. I've had a conversation with the county judge. I'm sure the chief has as well with the mayor. But we all are heading in the right direction, which is doing everything we can to ensure that we move forward in the criminal justice system, and that we punish those individuals that commit crime, especially violent crime. So we're working on it, and like I said, it's a work in progress, but we're going to keep working on it.
Thank you, and I think that I speak probably on behalf of many of us. We appreciate y'all working together for the safety and security of all of us here. I do have another question on the comment card. This is for you, Chief McManus. How does the police department decide how many officers go to a call? It doesn't take a whole force for a crime scene. There are people who need help too. The reason I ask is because it took a 2-hour wait when my child and I were hit in a car accident.
You know, I think one of the pet peeves across the city is having to wait for a police officer to come to a traffic accident. Matter of fact, a couple of months ago, I got a call from one of the directors in the city saying, "Hey, Chief, can you get a police car out here? I've been waiting for an hour and a half for them to show up." And calls are dispatched based on a priority system. And to be quite frank, a non-injury traffic crash is not a priority, and whoever is involved in that will simply have to wait until there's a car that's free. But, you know, you can very easily go to a substation and fill out that paperwork that you want to fill out and have it turned in instead of waiting there for a police officer. And I know that sometimes on certain crime scenes it may look like there's an overabundance of police officers, but I guarantee you that everyone on that scene has an assignment, and after a certain time, some of those assignments may not be necessary anymore, and those officers are placed back in service. But in the beginning, you know, especially in a violent crime, you're going to see a lot of police officers. But again, after everything starts to get sorted out, we understand what's going on, those officers that are not needed on that scene will be sent back into service.
I have some people here with some questions, and again, folks, if we can limit it to 30 seconds, that would be appreciated. I know I have some more folks back here that want to ask some questions. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
I'm just going to read my notes here. I'll just start like this. I feel my concern is citywide, statewide, and even nationwide. Bottom line, in caps, to my heartbreaking concern, not enough is being done in all areas to help the mentally ill population. That is medical and non-medical. Medical care services and SAPD need to do better. Texas ranks as one of the lowest states in the nation in providing the right care for the mentally ill. And that is a real fact. San Antonio has two major private hospitals in behavioral health hospitals, San Antonio Behavioral, and Laurel Ridge. UT Health, and there is a state hospital. University and Methodist have very limited services. I know this is not about mental health services, but it goes hand in hand with SAPD, your department, from the district attorney. Speaking from experience, UT Health will even turn away and close its doors to patients because it does not have the capability of treating patients who require a special level of care that should be provided. To Chief McManus, you read the statistics related to the number of mental health calls the other night. If SA would provide better health care for the mentally ill, maybe you wouldn't be swamped with so many calls. Calls that are answered by police officers who have minimal training, who are not medical professionals, who take the wrong approach many times, results in mistreatment of individuals who need medical care, not handcuffs, and not to be arrested, and not to be put in jail. You mentioned some of the city programs consisting of teams that should respond in times of crisis or mental health needs. However, SAPD is the one that responds. In response to these calls, again leading to mistreatment, handcuffs, being punched, thrown to the ground, arrest, and jail, or facing other consequences such as misdemeanors and felonies as a result of the action that takes place during that arrest. I'm almost done. This isn't right. It just isn't right. These individuals have a medical condition and should not be treated like criminals. Many times they become criminals, resulting for the mistreatment and the wrong approach. In general, the mentally ill population many times is not respected with dignity or compassion. This is inhumane, very sad, and unacceptable.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think we have another.
I'll be very brief. I'm Dean DeSoto. I came here in 1977, lived here ever since, And I've noticed huge changes in San Antonio, good and not so good. So I will say this, Mr. District Attorney Gonzalez, my question to you is this. I'd like you to tell your definition of virtue and your definition of public safety. And my last part of my question is, then can you please tell me how they work in this system? Because I think all of us in this room are seeking virtue and public safety. That's my question, sir. Thank you.
Well, first, let me, I see you, were you at the town hall on Monday?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I thought I recognized you. Virtue is a lofty goal. We all would like to think that we're virtuous in the way we lead our lives. Certainly, what we want to conduct ourselves in an ethical and an honest, virtuous manner. I think in terms of what we do as prosecutors, I like to think that virtue is a goal that we strive to attain every day. We take an oath to seek justice, not to prosecute, which means that, for example, if we believe someone is being wrongfully charged, it is our obligation to dismiss that case and to not go forward. Because the worst thing that can happen is that you send somebody to prison who didn't commit a crime. That, I think, is virtuous. Public safety requires that we be aware of what our obligation is to ensure that our citizens in our community can go to the local grocery store without fear of having a gun put to their head, can go to the gas station without fear of being a victim of road rage, can ensure that if they're victims of crime, that we're going to do everything we can to prosecute that individual, and if we have that evidence, that we will do that. So that is our obligation, is to do everything we can to ensure the public safety by requiring that every one of our individuals that work for the DA's office does our job.
Thank you so much. Just a quick time check. It is 7:24. We do need to be respectful of the Doris Griffin Senior Center. Thank you for hosting us here. I think we have, wrapping up with one or a few more questions. Go ahead, Eric.
I don't know if this is the place to say this, but I sent this to the police 2 years ago, and they ignored it. Our city, our country is getting out of breath by the southern border. Every country in the world is coming over here. Just think, it took 9 people in 9/11 to do damage, and there's about hundreds of terrorists. They're planning they're just planning the next flight. And my recommendation is to the police, which are hiding hole in the fire department, is that they need to be hiring every year like 100 to keep up pace, because the population is exploding, and your officers, sir, need to be equipped with vests and helmets. These guys are coming hardcore. And the news came out just the other day. They're using grenades. Grenades. That's how bad the hardcore criminals from the south are coming. And you need to be ready. You know, President, when I was growing up, a lot of people here my age can remember, it was safe to walk San Antonio. There was a policeman every block. We need to hire more police and have them equipped with the proper gear. And if this thing about the shootings, I says, I think where they give you the resources, like there's technology. Come on, I mean the social media. These kids, some of these guys are broadcasting what they're gonna do, and we need to be ahead of them, you know. And one last thing, because is DA, Mr. DA, you need to be tougher. The word on the street is that you're soft. And that's the word, okay? And these bonds need to be like $1 million. I mean, why are you giving them $200, $200? And then also follow, and also then you got a 90-day window.
Unless you have questions, thank you.
Everybody's scared.
I'll go ahead and do the assert. But I didn't get a chance.
Did you, I don't know if there was any response or.
Well, again, you may have missed my explanation of how bonds work, sir. even if we would recommend $1 million bond, the magistrate judge sets the bond, and I would suspect that that you wouldn't keep it at $1 million. I've not. There was a recent case where it was a very aggravated capital murder case. The prosecutor that argued for that case went to a hearing, a bond hearing. That bond was set at $500,000. And so that was there's an argument that should have been $1 million bond, but it wasn't. And so what I'm saying is we have to be realistic in terms of where we recommend, because we know the judges are going to set the bonds at where they believe is the appropriate amount.
So we need to vote out the judges, okay?
Well, those judges that I'm talking about are not elected officials. They work at the behest of the district judges. But I do think that we should engage in a dialogue about how to improve the system to ensure that we do everything we can to keep our community safe.
And we are going to have to wrap up. We do need to be respectful of time. It's 7:29. The tables are going to be here afterwards. So if you have individual questions or concerns, please see them at the tables. I do want to thank you all so much for coming out tonight. You know, this was from 6 to 7:30, and we knew that we needed to be respectful of the time. But thank you so much for your engagement. Thank you for caring. And again, the tables in the back are going to be around here. Thanks so much.